Hello everyone and welcome to season 2 of the Student Art Podcast. I'm your host Ross Baxter. The podcast is a weekly series where I bring on guests in the film and game industries. If this is your first time here though, and you want to learn how to grow as an artist and learn what it takes to make it as a career, start now by subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. From SpaceX going viral to designing the future, today on the show we've got an incredible guest for you. We've got concept and product designer Rafe Johnson on the show. Rafe, it's a pleasure having you here. How you doing, man?
Very well, thanks for the introduction, man.
It means a lot. I was saying this before we went live. There's a lot of interesting topics that we can dive into today. Lots of topics I've never been able to had the chance to talk about. But we'll start off with good old introductions first. Rafe, tell us a wee bit about yourself and we'll take it from there, man.
Yeah, so I am as Ross mentioned, a designer, kind of a blend of multiple things at the moment. Very early on in my career, so I'm currently doing freelance, and I started off studying at the same university as Ross did, the year below him on the same course doing computer arts. And I kind of decided in my high school days that I was like, there's a video game course, and a couple of my friends are going to do a video games course, and I love video games, so let's give that a bash. And I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do, but decided to follow that route. And I think it was maybe in my third year, maybe going into fourth year, where you kind of are a little bit pressured to specialize.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, it was definitely fourth year. Actually, I kind of decided that I was really into design, but I was also really into 3D, and so I was sort of kind of looking, is there a middle ground to doing both of the two, and having some way of complementing each other. So ended up going down that route, but then as well as loving the digital world and games and films, I also kind of had this urge to sort of always kind of had this fantasy of bringing sci-fi ideas and concepts into the real world. So I decided to pursue a master's in product design.
Mm-hmm.
And then did some interesting projects during that. I had some funny ones, some ups and downs there, and that was definitely a learning experience, and also just a complete shift in a lot of ways. So then moved, as a result of one of my projects having some success, at the end of that I was able to freelance for a year, which takes me up to now. So that's me.
Perfect. Yeah, because dude, the amount of stuff, like I know you said there that, so obviously a lot of students, it's hard to kind of figure out what you want to do, especially in the later years, or when you're getting pushed to kind of figure out that big question we're striving to get to through all our years of study. But you went down a really awesome avenue, and you're one of very few people that I know. This is why having you on, it's going to be such a pleasure talking about so many different topics. And the question I just wanted to start to ask you is, what got you into like robotics and a passion for neuroscience? Like, where was this? When did this click? When was the highlight moment?
So yeah, that was an interesting one. That was kind of a merge of lots of different things. So it started. Well, one part of this is my mum was she was a neuroscientist, so that was kind of always at the back of my head, and possibly whatever genes that she had that interest passed on through to me. So I don't know if that's got a strong link, but the main one was, I think it was second or third year of university, I got really into reading. And the first book I got, I remember I was going through, I think it was a Waterstones or something, and I saw a book about the brain, and I was like, oh, I don't know why, I just really wanted to pick it up. I was like, that sounds cool, I'm going to give that a read. And I remember reading it and like being absolutely blown away by some of the stuff in there. And then mainly just because like, you know so little about yourself, and the brain in so many ways is the entirety of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember after getting the book, I just went to so many of my friends, but like, you got to read this book. This is the best book ever. And they were all like, yeah, Rafe, shut up. I was like, maybe it's just me.
Wait, who did you ask? Did you ask Eddie?
I didn't ask Eddie, but I'm
Eddie,
sure
you better be reading this book if you're listening, Eddie. You better be reading it.
I'll definitely, but he is probably one of the few that would pick it up and be like, oh yeah, Rafe, good choice. So, and then I basically, as a result of that, and this is just kind of like a general tip for reading, when you start reading, like you end up discovering so many things within that book about different worlds. And actually it was that book, and for anybody who wants to know, it's just called The Brain by David Eagleman.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, there was the last chapter that is essentially about transhumanism. So it's kind of what's the future of brains, and what's the future of us going to look like, and Are we limited to the bodies we've got, and are we limited to the brains we've got, and various things like that. And I thought that was just like so interesting and just something I'd never really considered. So I ended up pursuing some more books that were around that. So there's another one called Life 3.0, which talks about similar stuff again. And then other worlds, more in the art world, I remember you'll probably know the guy Vitaly Bulgarov.
Yep, absolute legend. His hard surface robots are insane.
Unbelievable. I remember seeing Ghost in the Shell work. And specifically, well, I mean, Ghost in the Shell is all about putting a brain into a robotic body. And I remember just being like, just the imagery for that blew me away. I was like, okay, I want to be like this guy. I want to be as good as this guy one day. So that was another big motivation factor. And I ended up reading into some more robotics and neuroscience stuff. And it kind of all just came together and flowed in that direction without me really like pushing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, I guess just also, this all probably links back, the transhumanism stuff, I was thinking about this earlier on, is it all probably links back starting at Deus Ex. Have you ever played that game?
So I know of it, but I've never played it.
Okay, so it's the first one's really old. I think it was the second one I played when I was a kid. And that game is essentially about the human body merging with robotics. And it does paint quite a dystopian picture, but I remember just being totally fascinated by it. And that kind of stuck with me throughout all these years. So that was definitely the first sort of, what's the right word? Exposure to that concept of technology. Yeah. So I guess, does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's a great start. Thanks for sharing that. Amazing. Because I was doing my research, learning about all these different languages. So I was going through your website, seeing all the different things that you've been exploring with robots, drones, you name it. The Tron bike as well, great. Lots of different experiments, and we'll talk a lot about this. But one of the things I kind of wanted to actually talk about was, I know you'll be limited to what you can say, but your recent project, or your two main projects, I guess. So your Bionic Future, which went viral. Congratulations, by the way. I was so happy for you when I saw that. Like, me and Eddie were just talking about it on Facebook. I was so happy for you, dude. It was such a cool experience because I've never seen anyone go through such a thing. I was like, Eddie was just like, he's popping off on Twitter. Check this out, check this out. It was nuts. And then obviously your latest project, which I found really fascinating because I've been diving into, I was talking to you about Elon Musk, etc., and space travel. So you were working for Seymour and Powell, working on the first commercial spaceship. I know you're limited to what you can say, but what was it like just in terms of like working on something on that scale? As a project?
So really cool. So just a big shout out to Seymour Powell, for sure. They're like a great group of guys, super talented guys and girls. And I think they actually found out about me through the project going viral. I think I sent some of my work, and also another guy from Abertay works for them, Jack Cullen, also great guy. And I think just a mixture of them seeing my work and then Jack mentioning I ended up getting a project with him over summer. And it was really cool. It was I think maybe, I can't remember. I'm unsure exactly what I can say, so I'm just trying to be careful.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Like, obviously, I don't want to put you under the bus on anything difficult, but I kind of want to throw this at you. So, who do you think will win the race to space? Who do you think you got? Virgin Galactic, SpaceX, or Blue Origin? Who do you think will take the ropes?
Well, I don't know. It looks like SpaceX is probably the furthest ahead at the moment. I think probably has the most funding and some of the most interesting technology. So I guess my gut would probably go with them if I would have to put money down on it or something like that. But I don't know that much about Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. I don't know enough about because the ship that they worked on, this most recent one, was sort of like a tourist ship, so kind of space tourism, whereas SpaceX is really trying to push things to Mars as soon as possible. So I would probably wager that it would be SpaceX first, but I think it's cool that there's this competition going on. I think that's really going to push this for far forward. Sorry. Yeah,
it's going to be such an interesting thing to see, because as kids, like, we're always craving about it. We've all had those thoughts about going to space or experiencing all these new things, and it's just cool the fact that we're actually going to be around it. Like, we're going to be in that kind of generation when it kicks off, because obviously there was that announcement, I don't know when it was, but it was a few years ago when they were talking about SpaceX going to Mars and their first adventure out there, and then obviously inhabiting Mars as well. And obviously Elon Musk being the mad genius that he is, his brain, I have no idea how that guy sleeps, dude. It is insane.
I don't think he does, man.
Yeah, I don't think he
I
does.
don't think he does.
Well, speaking, I know it's a bit of a tangent question, but is there any of his projects that you like the most?
Well, Elon was like one of the big inspirations for me. Again, like I think it was maybe in my second or third year of uni, I picked up his book and I knew nothing about him. But I'd just seen, like Elon Musk inventing the future of the space industry and the future in general. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I kind of read his story and I was like, holy, this is unbelievable. Like to get that far, and the way he did it was just like, because who decides to just start up a company in the space industry, or like try and reinvent the car basically and stuff like that. I just couldn't believe it. But oh, sorry, I completely lost. What was it you were saying? Sorry, what was the question? What I think of Elon, or what was my favorite project?
Favorite project. No, it's fine.
So probably either SpaceX as a whole, more because of the ambition and the overall mission of it, I think is like definitely very inspirational. But if we're going specifics, like Neuralink, the recent stuff now is like, I think that's probably got the most potential. Probably that one's just mind blowing, literally.
I assume you listened into the podcasts with obviously Joe Rogan. It was here. Were you terrified at all? Because I was just like, how? Because he makes it sound so simple when he talks, and like that just shows how intelligent he is. But obviously he was talking about like the whole concept about pigs and everything. It was. I have no idea how the man does it.
Yeah, I mean, like I guess that's it. Like he decides he wants to do something. He sees whether or not it's like even remotely possible, and if it is, and it makes sense, and if it's something that's going to inevitably happen, then he's like, yeah, all right, we'll do it. He's in the position to be able to do that these days. But yeah, both, like I think for me, it's got unbelievable amount of potential. It's one of the most interesting things going on, and the brain is obviously like one of the most non-understood, or at least understood parts of, well, I guess everything.
Yeah,
like, we know so little about it. So I think it's so interesting. I think like it should be happening, but at the same time, there's also like very understandable concerns around the whole world, for sure. So. Both, yeah. Like I'm excited, but I'm also like,
yeah. It's a bit of a, but then again, that's the greatest thing about what he does and what you do. Because the one thing I have so much respect for designers and the way you think, it's all about innovating, come up with new ideas, and not kind of being phased, like exploring, and not necessarily always think about making, I guess, the perfect portfolio piece, but really just thinking outside the box. And I think that's one thing that we can learn a lot from you is. Every like project that you've experimented on, like you've tried on lots of different things, from vehicles to even stuff similar to Westworld, like your projects that you've done, really fun. So what made you want to go down like the designing route?
I guess I discovered that's the part that I enjoyed the most. Like I like 3D a lot, but I see it as a tool for design. Like it's a means to an end. I don't love 3D for the sake of 3D. So yeah, I think a lot of some of the stuff, like the main point I'm trying to get across in my work or my pieces is not necessarily the polish and the 3D skills necessarily, but it's more the idea that I'm trying to convey a lot of the time. I guess that's what I find most interesting. Like if I've got an idea or there's maybe something I've been learning about, it's like, okay, how can I sort of visualize that and get a greater understanding of that by making it myself, but also sort of letting other people get a peer into that world without necessarily having to read a book or listen to, just look at one image and be like, oh, that's a cool idea. How does that work? And maybe that inspires them to go and have a further look themselves. Yeah, and also the design world, that's kind of where everything sort of starts. Like it falls into almost every single industry, the design world, like it can fall into the medical industry or the vehicle industry or just about anything. So you can sort of take it in any route that you're really interested about,
Yeah, completely agree. You've got such a wide room of opportunity. And I think that's another great thing about being a designer is simply the fact that if you ever come across a point that maybe you do want to try something different, or you've kind of touched on an avenue for so long, you can easily switch. Well, easily is probably a a bit of a strong word to use, but at least you could transition into something different. So when you're working on your projects, so robotics or things that are more like your prosthetics projects, like what questions are you asking? What's like your usual routine to make a piece?
Honestly, it depends. It depends because some of the pieces, I guess, are more. I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I do need a new portfolio piece. So it's trying to blend the stuff I'm interested in with maybe exploring a new software or trying to touch up like my ZBrush skills or something like that. But I don't know. Very often it's like, what's an idea that I want to explore, and can I explore that by making it type thing. And so the process can be very different. Like for example, the project that went viral, that was very much, I had no clue what I was going to make at the end of that. That was like, I knew I wanted to do something with prosthetics and I wanted to explore some kind of, new and interesting technology. So at the beginning, it was going to be a VR project. And then I discovered Leap Motion, and then I sort of like began to piece things together. And I had a lot of time on that project compared to some of the other pieces. But that sort of just came together without a plan at the end. Whereas some of the other, I guess, more visual orientated ones, I'm like, okay, I want something to look like this at the end, and what are the steps to get there? So like there was a robot piece, for example, and I knew in my head, okay, I want to make something that maybe looks like it's made by Apple and is all mechanical and focused on the hard surface stuff, and maybe looks like something you would want in your home in 20 years time. And so that design process is a lot different to say the other one.
Yeah. That's awesome. Sweet. Because we've got a lot of topics we're going to be diving in today. I want to throw you this bit of a random curveball at you, because this is a question I was always curious. So, as concept artists and designers, we're exploring, or you're exploring shapes all the time. Do you think shapes will eventually come to a point that it doesn't really matter because of obviously the advancing of technology, like aerodynamics, etc.? Do you think you'll be able to eventually just make any shape you want?
Like, for example, like give me an example, like a vehicle, for example. Like,
yes. Let's say, so an easy one would probably be, let's say, a plane. So, do you think it'll get to a point that technology is just so advanced that it could be any shape?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Eventually, yeah.
I just don't. I like every time I'm looking into like artists' work, like they'll take the Death Star for example, or all these shapes, famous ships, etc. through our years of childhood and stuff. I'm like, obviously we're always overthinking function. Like, that's not gonna work, surely. And it's like, how could that be designed? But I'm really curious to see what take it actually goes, like, or how far we are from actually not having any creative, what's the word, like limitations. Like literally, you can make any shape you want. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think a big movement in sort of technology will be the dematerialization of things. And I guess that's sort of what the digital world is. It's like taking stuff and moving onto this platform that's totally flexible and in some way almost doesn't physically exist. So I think things moving more into that world is going to be the case. Like, and that'll be the case for AR and VR stuff as well, for sure. So I think it'll be an interesting space to watch that kind of thing. I think at the forefront of technology, so for example, spaceships, shape's gonna definitely matter for a long time. Whereas like, I think cars, it'll be more like sooner where shape doesn't matter, if that makes sense. The stuff that's much more challenging and is on like right at the forefront of that tech end is the shape. Does that make sense, or am I?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think we'll, well, to be honest, we're probably experiencing it right now. Do you think we'll still be around when that takes off? Like, do you think it's maybe too soon?
So I'm super optimistic about this stuff. So I think like things are gonna like rapidly progress. So like if you kind of look at even just in the last, Elon Musk always talks about this. If you look at like when games were first invented, and I think maybe that's just beyond I think that was in the 80s.
Okay.
The first game, was it Pong? I don't know. If you look at the progress in like 40 years, not even that, 35 years to what they look like now, and moving onto the VR platform is absolutely insane. Yeah. But it's the fact that that's like progressing, that's getting even faster. It's an exponential growth. And there's a really good book for anybody who's interested in the tech world and sort of what's going on, called The Future is Faster Than You Think. And I'm reading that just now, and it's talking about, there's a really good page about life expectancy or life, what's the term when you're trying to extend life? I can't remember off the top of my head. Well, I mean, it's essentially the technology that's being used to extend our lifespan. And
I've never heard of this. This sounds insane. Awesome.
there's loads of it. There's loads of different areas of it, but a lot of it is in the sort of being able to edit our DNA and our genomes. So like a lot of the reasons that we end up getting old and dying is issues that are happening to our cells that's almost like pre-programmed into us through our DNA. And so there's loads of companies who are getting like crazy funding, and especially some of the big companies like Google are jumping on this stuff as well, where they're doing research into looking at how we can basically remove those bits of code so that our cells don't end up degrading, or as quickly anyway. And they're doing like tests on mice and stuff, and they're finding like amazing success from it. So back to the point. Oh yeah, so there's I think it might be right now that this is happening, or it might be estimated for like 10 years, but they're basically thinking that every year that you stay alive, your life expectancy goes up by a year type thing. So you're almost staying ahead of death with the way that technology is advancing, if that makes sense.
Wow. Right.
So just to put it really short, I think there's a good chance that we'll be living a lot longer than, for example, our grandparents are now, if the world doesn't destroy itself before then.
Yeah. Dude, I wish I had you on the podcast way early. This is insane already. We're just warming up, folks. The world of robots. I love this. I could finally talk to someone, geek out a bit. This is great.
Yeah.
I bet it's like when you finally come across someone who does like robotics, I bet you just start geeking out non-stop, man. It'd be such
like 100%. Sometimes I'm just like, right, I really want to talk about some nerdy stuff right now.
Yeah.
Half the time people are like, oh, Rafe's just talking again. Shut up.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best topics. Right, since we're on this subject, because obviously it's going at such a rapid rate, do you think it's going too quickly?
Well, like in some ways, yeah. Like I think the world, and this kind of maybe can link to some mental health things as well. Like the world has changed so much more quickly than our biology has changed. So like we have like problems now, not necessarily all mental health mental health orientated, but there's a lot of things where the world isn't. There's kind of functions in us, like for example, anxiety, that don't really need to exist, and a lot of I'm trying to word this correctly.
No, I understand.
that are caused, if you look at like social media, for example, you're getting exposed to like the best of the best all the time, and you're like always comparing yourself against that, and it's like there's no sort of like manual book or like way to understand how to deal with that, but that's actually a really powerful thing. Like, and I've had that before. Sometimes I'm like, man, I'm spending way too much time on Instagram. I'm comparing myself against what looks like amazing lives all the time. I'm like, man, should I be like way more successful at this age type stuff? And the point I'm making here is like that stuff didn't exist. I don't know, like even like 20 years ago.
Yeah. And
so all this stuff is happening so quickly, and we've got all these built-in mechanisms in our brains and such, or even our bodies, and they're reacting to this stuff in a way that we don't really fully understand. And so we kind of have to adjust to that, and that's going to continue to probably progress. And it's a kind of like the common thing with older people. They tend to a lot of the time be technophobes because it's like so overwhelming for them. It's like unbelievable, some of the stuff that they just can't believe it. So they're like, right, I'd rather not confuse or worry myself about that. And like you kind of as well with tech moving so fast, even it's for a good example is just if you're in the industry, for example, if you're in the 3D industry, you have to be constantly adaptable. You have to constantly be learning the next tool. When ZBrush rolls an update out, you need to be learning that to stay up to date with the industry type stuff. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely, I don't want it to slow down, because I think the overall force of it is a good thing. Like, for example, getting us into space or extending our life expectancy. But I think it's something that should be more aware of, and people need to be careful of, and understand that it can be overwhelming.
Really appreciate that answer, because I was talking to this literally my guest last night. So we were talking about the exact same topic. Too many people are, because I did this exact same thing, prioritizing social media with this high kind of, yes, let's get the numbers going, let's increase things. But you pictured it there perfectly. You said it there perfectly. Instagram is like I would say it's the creme de la creme example. People like we don't know how long these people are taking to take one photo just to get certain views, and the fact that is a thing is insane. Yes, I understand maybe if it's for a job or something, but if it's just out of like a daily life and you're spending, I don't know, half an hour to an hour just to get one photo, it doesn't sound healthy at all. It doesn't sound right, because you should appreciate who you are for even if the photo looks horrendous. Like I've taken millions of horrible photos, worst photos of all times. But guess what? Screw it, post it instantly. A worst photo ever, always a good laugh. But
Yeah, 100%.
I completely agree with you because the guest who I had on previously as well, he was saying he said exactly the same thing. So yeah, you said the best answer possible for that. So when it comes to, by the way, slow me down if you ever need me because I'm going to be firing non-stop questions.
No, the coffee's hitting my blood at the moment.
You're
I'm on
rocking and
board.
rolling. We timed this just right then. So, as a designer, one of the things that you were saying there previously when we were talking about the planes and stuff is, I guess you have to also know when to take away from your design. So, maximizing materials and stuff, being efficient. When you think of a project, are you thinking in terms of like manufacturing? Because I assume obviously it's a healthy balance between, obviously, because you want to have fun creating stuff, but are you really focused on how things could be made and stuff and like how it's put together?
Actually, no, that's probably, I mean, it depends on the project. Sometimes I consider it more, but generally that's probably one of the things that lacks more in my design. I'm like, a lot of the time I'm sort of making things and I'm more interested in the form or the general idea that I'm trying to get across. And I think like sometimes I'm like not thinking about the materials or I'm not thinking about exactly how this would be made. And that a part of that is because a lot of this stuff is very future orientated. So I'm like, they'll figure a way to make this stuff. Like, I don't need to worry about that too much. But I think sometimes when you see really good designs, they look so convincing a lot of the time because those designers have really considered how that's going to be made. And, you know, you can see that sort of industrial design knowledge or kind of side to it. But to answer your question, not so much. No, I'm more just trying to explore the shapes and trying to create interesting materials or whatsoever. But I probably should.
Well,
probably should consider that, man.
In saying that though, I think so. I was so on your Twitter, you said I think it was on your Twitter. You said something that I had so much respect for because there's a lot of people that I think overthink the whole process sometimes rather than just having fun being creative. And I think more artists need to stop, I guess, prioritizing what all the industry wants, what everyone else wants, and just for a second take a step back and be like, right, let's explore some cool shapes. Let's go crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important. So like what you're doing, like I think that's crucial because that will separate you from others because you're not limiting yourself. It's like what you were saying earlier about Elon, like he's going crazy, he's experimenting things, he's trying different things, and it shook up the whole industry in such obviously such a positive way. And yes, a lot of people are questioning certain things that maybe he's doing, but that's the way, that's just what happens in every industry. People make something different. Like for example, when you went viral, like everyone saw your project and was like, it was so unique because it was something completely different. Like I didn't know anything about it until Eddie obviously was telling me, by the way, do you know what Rafe's working on? I was like, I haven't seen it. And then I saw the post and then he said, you better go check his post. And then it was insane. Like it's, because I never thought that would come out of a student as well. So what you're doing, I think is important.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that a lot, man. I think like kind of just going off what you were saying, I think it is really important in any creative profession or maybe just any area of life is like, yeah, do look for advice from other people and do follow what other people do and do listen to it all, but understand like you need to follow what you are curious about. And like I remember during my masters so many times I was like, fuck me, like my projects are sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but
just be yourself.
Like,
be yourself.
I was like, oh man, my projects are so weird compared to everybody else's, and like maybe I should tone it down a bit, or maybe I should do this. And I did one project basically, and anybody who's in my class will remember it, where like I basically decided to try and make this 6-finger project. Where
yep, I watched. I saw it.
So it's a weird one, and I remember I got marked really badly for it, and I was like, man, shit, like should I just sort of like ignore this whole prosthetics thing and sort of go down a safer route? And then I was like, you know what, nah, screw it, like I'm just gonna keep doing this. I find it interesting, and to be honest, like I actually don't care what grade I get. I just want to make something that I am genuinely curious about because like I'm gonna enjoy that, and it ended up paying off. Like I think you do need to obviously listen to other people and consider their advice, but really follow what you're interested in. I think that's the most important thing, and don't worry too much about what other people think. You're always going to get, especially in the art industry, you're always going to get people criticizing, and it's also more difficult to hear that criticism because art and design is also like quite a personal thing in a lot of ways. So it's not just them criticizing this external thing; it's criticizing part of you. So you're like, oh, well, that hurts.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important just to be, if you want to, to not think like everybody else necessarily. That's not what I'm trying to say. That's not what I'm saying I'm doing, but I think people should do that. I think Elon Musk, for example, is a good example because he's just not too worried about what other people are thinking. And people probably tried to talk him out of the work that he was doing. And he was like, no, I'm interested in this. I'm going to just do it, even if it fails or even if it goes terribly. And I think everybody would benefit from having more of a mindset like that sometimes.
Because you nailed it there, and I'm glad that you went into depth about that, because like it's the same thing with my podcast. Like, for example, yes, it's like I love making a podcast, right? And I love do my best to try and help people and stuff. But once again, like you said, we all have different opinions. We all learn from different things. So every time people are tuning in, remember, just the most important thing to get from this point: I'm not right. I'm just giving my opinions. I'm just saying what I've learned and listening from people's stories. And this is the great thing about conversation. It's all about talking. So like me talking to you right now, I'm learning about how you think, and we get to go back and forth through this. But it's always nice to see when people do these just projects out of nowhere, and then like the lecturer will be like, wait, that's not the norm, therefore it can't be accepted, and then you completely go viral, make incredible work, and then it's like, haha, I proved you wrong. It's like, but most importantly, you enjoyed it, and you're doing the thing because you love it. And I think like these experimenting, and like, the last 2 podcasts has been very focused on experimenting and why we have to, like, I have this whole kind of debate about grades. Like I was talking to Ryan Locke on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
And me and Ryan could have talked about grades for ages. It's just people too much, like, grades are important because they keep you on track. I think they give you a target, and that's important in life. If you lack a wee bit of motivation, but people think that if you get a bad grade, that means you've done something wrong. But that's not necessarily the case. Like what you did there, like for example, you were talking about like, because I only came across this yesterday. So, the 6 finger, I was like, because I have never in a million years come up with that. Like just trying to think of that. It's like, so like what were you thinking? I know it's a bit of a random question, but what was were you just trying to experiment of if we had a 6 finger, what would happen?
Yeah, kind of. So there's another project actually out there. I wasn't the first one to explore this, and they did it way better than I did. So if anybody's interested, just Google. I think it's called 6 Finger Project or something like that, and that one will come up, and that's pretty cool. But it was constrained a little bit by a brief that we were on. So it was specifically to look into alternate ways of helping people with arthritis grip things. And that's definitely an important area, but I was more interested in, well, I really wanted to incorporate prosthetics basically. So I was trying to look for any way of like just forcing in prosthetics at this point. I was like, right, this is a topic I'm interested in. I'm going to make this somehow fit in. And I don't think it did really particularly fit in was what happened in the end. Is
this in 3rd year or is this in 4th year?
No, this was in my master's.
Oh, your
project.
master's. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So there was several briefs just throughout the first kind of half of the year. There were smaller projects. So it was just I think it was just a 2-month-long project alongside some other stuff.
Yeah.
It was an exploration into that, and I was also so much of my work had been digital before that, and I'd never really explored physical making and things like that. And there was a little bit of programming involved. So it was sort of like an opportunity just to explore these fields that I'd never really explored before, just to see if there was something I'd find interesting.
Nice.
Basically.
And then obviously that then tailored into, I guess, the creme de la creme project. The one that really helped everything was Bionic Future. So
yeah.
Let's so everyone who's tuning in, you'll be seeing it on the background right now. It's an incredible piece, and I'll let you obviously take the ropes. Tell us a wee bit about this project, and where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, so this was there was three parts to the masters, and this was basically the summer project. And over the summer project, you just choose one thing. It's not like you're doing multiple modules. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, okay, I want to do something to do with prosthetics, definitely, and I want to do something to do with some kind of newish technology. So it was originally, I think I mentioned before, it was originally going to be VR. The most initially, I had a really ambitious idea of using leap motion to control like a real robotic hand.
Okay.
And I was like, man, that'd be so cool if I could make
Yeah,
that. But
that'd
I was
be
like,
insane.
I was like, there's no way I'm making that in this time. So I was exploring sort of other routes and other ways, and I can't. There was never like a specific point where I realized that this is what I wanted to do. It just sort of the project evolved through different iterations, different sketches, just different bits of work, and it sort of ended up getting there. And on my portfolio, you can kind of see like some examples of just like sort of cardboard cutouts and things like that. So that was just an example of the iterative process and things. And I think it was this like idea of I wanted to do the stuff using my digital skills and prosthetics, but I also wanted to bring like this physical element to it as well. And I think that was what ended up making it successful, because I think it was one of my lecturers kind of was like, oh man, it'd be really cool if you added a physical side to this. And I was initially hesitant. I was like, I want to stay in my safe space with digital stuff. And he kind of pushed me, and like, I'm very glad he did in the end. And so the project itself, it was going to be essentially a tool to allow people with prosthetics to design their own prosthetic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then evolved into, let's do like an exploration into the future of transhumanism, basically. So I wanted to just add in that sci-fi element. And so that allowed it to be a little bit more free with what I could do. And so the project itself, the point of it, I guess, is to look at, if you're maybe in sort of like this bionic clinic and you're about to get a bionic arm fitted, you would go to this thing and you would basically customize your own bionic arm before you get it fitted type thing, and look at how it would look like on you and get a feel for it type thing. So it was a fun project. There was no huge like functional purpose behind it. It was mostly sort of like an interesting thing to look at, get you thinking type thing.
Well, the first time that I saw it, it goes back to the point, and I think this is a super important thing to bring up. So you were saying like it didn't kind of feel like it was such a complex project going on, but that's one of the things I really value so much about your work, and it always makes sense. Like, for example, you're saying about, obviously you got the job with Seymour and Powell, great connection, like your work works so well. Yes, I'm no master in this, I'm not experienced in this area, but when I see your work, I think those, like the juggernauts of that industry, like in terms of product design and like the style that you go with, like for example, like we talked earlier about SpaceX, and it's so clean, and it makes so much sense why it went viral. And so let's just talk about viral, because how did that feel, like knowing that so many people loved your work? Like you had 2.3 million views, 50,000 retweets, and 200,000 likes. But most importantly, how did it feel just to like people love your work that much?
Like so surprising. I had no remote clue that people were gonna react to it at all. Like I wasn't even really planning on like. I think it was my friend that tweeted it, and he just saw it on like my Snapchat or something, and he was like, "Oh, that's really cool, man. Can I share that?" And I was like, "Yeah, go for it." And then suddenly it just, like an hour later, he was like, "Man, like look at my Twitter," and I was like, "What? What's going on?" Like out of nowhere, it was the most bizarre thing. It was really cool. Like it was super nice to see that people were like interested in this stuff, and like sort of in my head the whole time I was like, man, this is more just sort of something I'm interested in. People aren't really gonna like, care too much about it. Like I'm just sort of doing this for me. And then so I was happy with the project just by myself. And then when I saw that people liked it as well, I was like, oh shit, this is like a very nice feeling.
Yeah,
for sure. And some of the comments were hilarious. Like I got some comedy out of just scrolling through the comments. It was
oh dude, well here, I don't even know how you survived it. It was mad. It was like because I was messaging Eddie, like I said, I was like, the numbers just keep going up. I think you got to like 5,000 followers in a week. I was like, this is nuts.
Yeah, like I had no idea what to do. I had this like immense the downside to it was like I felt it was really big pressure to make use of it. I was like, oh man, like suddenly I've got this exposure. How do I capitalize on that type thing? And I sort of like put this pressure on myself to make use of it, and then, but honestly, like I don't think that's important. I remember sort of asking my friends, I was like, what should I do? What should I do? He's like, they were just like, just enjoy it, man. And I was like, oh
Of
yeah.
course.
To be fair, that's probably good advice. Like, I'm just gonna chill out and not worry about it too much. But some of the messages I got, man, were like, so many people thought it was real. Like it was like this real tool that was gonna just like give you this bionic arm, and I was like, how have you jumped to that?
The conclusion straight away.
Yeah, how have you? And I got just so many weird messages being this like, I will pay you for this thing, and I was like, I don't think this is like what you think it is. Like,
yeah,
just chill out.
It's always interesting because I've never been able to obviously talk about something like this, and it's always nice seeing someone you know do well. So it's great to see great work getting noticed, and then obviously that opened up some great avenues. For example, the BBC interview, and I was trying to hunt this interview down, and I could not find it. But what was that? What was that about? Was that all about the transhumanism as well?
Yeah. So just for people who are not too sure about the term transhumanism, is essentially, just in summary, it's the concept of merging technology with like the human being. And so I would argue, just by the way, that things like hip replacements or like cochlear implants, like ear implants and things, are all fit into that category. But it's just going to get more so and more so. Anyway, so the BBC were doing a documentary on transhumanism, and they saw my work, and they came in and they filmed it, and they were like, oh, do you want to come on TV and just like be basically posed as a transhumanist expert type thing to talk to you about. So it ended up being a weird one, actually. Like, so the BBC tried to sort of, what's the word, paint transhumanism as this like kind of grungy underground thing where like people just like cut their arms open and stick like chips inside, and that's
really?
what.
Wow. Okay.
And so they ended up not using my work in the actual documentary itself. And I remember, like, I was on, and I had no idea. They never told me what kind of questions they were going to ask me, and they started talking about this like whole world that I had no clue about, and like, it was kind of a shame because they had so much potential to talk about it, but they really tried to like almost paint it in this negative dystopian light that all transhumanism was just like small group of people just like cutting themselves open. And I was like, why am I here? This isn't what I wanted to talk about. But like it was still interesting and a cool experience, but just kind of like, to me, it was a good example of like the media, you know, they push things in the way that they want to push it for the sake of a story, not for the sake of like, you know, real life. Nonetheless, like, it was a cool experience, just a bit of a shame. I think they could have done a much better job of looking at the upsides to transhumanism and just painting it, exploring what the whole thing was a little better.
No, thanks for answering that, because there's so much great potential, and it's so nice to see all the cool stories about all the people who are getting who are doing supporting prosthetics. I know a big name being Amy Mullins, who's helping a ton of people through her career, obviously growing up with her condition and evolving and trying to teach people through it. And it's such a cool avenue, and obviously your project makes it even more fun, because obviously it's like you can design your own prosthetic and make it more appealing, make it more unique. And just like the first time you ever watched Star Wars, just like the arm and the whole scenario, and then thinking, wait, this could actually happen. And like one of my closest friends, he only has one arm, and just to think that one day, even now with today's technology, things have got so much more advanced, and he's been able to do a lot more, and he's kicking ass. He's doing so much great things. Like, he's one of the best athletes I know, and it's never held him back. But it's good to see that there's these things now getting made for people to make their just life 10 times easier. Yeah.
And like, just going back to the brain book that I was talking about, this I guess links again back to like sort of the connection between the interest in the brain stuff and the transhumanist stuff. Is in that brain book, which is also a BBC doc. Is it a BBC? It's also a documentary you can watch as well. At the end, I think it's episode 6 and the 6th chapter in the book, when they're talking about the future, there is an example of this woman who is paralyzed from the neck down. and they basically give this. They can implant something into her head that allows her to control the most developed bionic arm, like robotic arm out there, just completely by thinking about it. Which I was like, and this was 4 or 5 years ago this happened. So like the technology is going to be even further ahead now. But I just could not believe that through this implant she was able to, and just by thinking about it, like shake somebody's hand. Like, that was absolutely mind blowing that stuff's out there and it's happening.
Dude, like that goes back to our discussion earlier. Like this is the great thing about why it's growing so rapidly, because it's like you said, like I wonder what's going to happen in 5 years' time. Like how far is it going to be ahead, and what opportunities are going to arise, and like it's going to help so many people's lives. It goes back to what we were saying about what's it called, Neuralink.
Neuralink, yeah.
Yeah, like the fact that when Joe was talking about it, like they were talking about the fact that it can cure so many diseases, or I'm not sure if disease is the right word, but like brain signals, etc., to make it like certain things just go away. Just having that as a possible option in the future, like all the people whose families have gone through such things now are having the chance to get a wee bit optimistic and make their lives even easier. It's insane to see.
Oh, absolutely. And like I'm such a advocate of like the technological world, and so many people are, I guess, a bit pessimistic about, like the big corporations controlling and the tech world being, but it's like, it's also what's basically allowed us, for example, the mortality rate to go way down and life expectancy to go way up. Like that's all part of technology and the industry. Like technology just spreads into everything from health to like cars, for example. And the stuff that it's going to be able to do is unbelievable. Like and you can look at it now, like some of the stuff that's going on, it's definitely reason to be optimistic for sure.
Yep. Because I remember there's a great tweet that you put out. I was like, oh, this is such a good one, because what you asked was what tools, etc., would you like if you had a prosthetic arm? And like all the comments were just going crazy, like all the different options. Like one of the people was like having like tools coming out your fingertips.
Yeah.
Like there was all these different people. There was like somebody was thinking about, imagine having like a hologram projection. What else is on my list? Someone was just saying like a lighter. Just like imagine being able to flick your thumb and then instant lighter. And then like another one was like detachable and like modular arms, so you could just like take it apart and then like put it away. I was like, that's the fun part about being a designer, being a creator with the technology, is like it's like you said, it's limitless. It just goes on and on. Speaking of projects, is there any other cool projects that you know of that's going on that you're looking forward to?
So in the book that I mentioned earlier, The Future is Faster Than You Think, I won't be able to name them specifically, but there is basically just so many things going on, like so many more than I was aware of that are going on. I guess a big one for me that's just kind of, it's very well known, but it's the HoloLens.
The HoloLens?
Yeah, the Microsoft HoloLens stuff. Like I remember when I first put the HoloLens 1 on, the HoloLens is basically an AR headset, augmented reality headset, for anybody who doesn't know, developed by Microsoft. And first time I put it on, I was like, there's a tiny field of view. So it's kind of underwhelming in a lot of ways, but you can really see the potential there. It's like, oh my, like this when it does reach like its sweet spot, this is going to be incredible. And so sort of, I guess, AR headsets in general, I'm definitely really interested in, because VR headsets are now really beginning to do well with the Oculus Quest and the Quest 2 just being announced, or not released, but just announced, I think. So they're gonna get there first, and then I think AR is definitely going to catch up and then surpass VR eventually. So those two worlds are just ones that I'm keeping an eye on. I think are just really interesting in general. Yeah. Obviously, Neuralink, as we mentioned before, there's not a huge amount known about it, but it's definitely one that I'm keeping my eye on as well.
Because there's obviously, like I said, infinite possibilities for this. When it comes to, just like speaking of these companies, like what are the companies that are doing all these things? Obviously, I only know like the ones that I've watched on YouTube, etc. Just like the ones that are more I guess, known to most of us, like the ones through Joe Rogan's podcast, etc. That's where I've learned from that, just through Elon and stuff. But like, what are these? What are the main companies in this field if anyone's wanting to pursue this as a career?
So the obvious ones are the big Apple, Facebook, maybe Amazon. I don't know, but those Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. There's one other big one I'm sure that I'm missing, but maybe not. But they are all doing stuff sort of. They're all the absolute huge companies, especially Google, where they're doing a lot of work in the backgrounds that you don't necessarily know about, but they're
Yeah.
definitely going to have huge teams working on, especially stuff in AI. But there's also just so many companies in Silicon Valley, and I think as well also probably in Asia. I don't know the names specifically, but it'll be very easy to find them if you just sort of look at AR companies or VR companies. I think it's either Samsung or Apple have patented, and I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I read that they patented the, what's it called, like a contact lens for AR, an AR contact lens.
Really?
So that sounds like sounds like that's in development.
Nice.
But generally, I think if anybody's interested in this stuff, like, again, I'm referencing that same book, Future is Faster Than You Think. They name so many of the companies that are working on this stuff. So definitely have a look there.
Yeah, because
sure.
I'll definitely. Sorry for cutting you off. I wasn't trying to be rude.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I'll definitely. I'm gonna have to buy this book. I'm gonna have to make sure to check out because it's so interesting because there's like I didn't expect you to say Google. I never in a million years would have thought they'd be diving into that field, but I guess it makes so much sense considering how big they are. Like all the like you named you said it there perfectly. Like there's so many things going behind the scenes that we're clearly obviously not going to know about until obviously they get released. Like there's so many different things getting made these days that come out of nowhere. Like wait, they actually made that, and then boom. But I think that's how the industry works. But everyone, I'll put all the links in description below as always, so you guys don't miss out on anything. So I've got a few more questions, Rafe, before we get into the fun madness of the podcast. All the bunch of random questions. I've been throwing you so many questions so far, so I do appreciate your patience.
Good questions.
It's always a good fun. So okay, so when it comes to inspiration, is there any main people that you look towards? So I know obviously you've named great books and stuff. Is there any main designers that stands out to you? Because I know you said Vitaly Bolkarov. Who else do you look for inspiration? And if not, if you've named them all, that's all right. I'm just curious to find out.
Definitely more specifically in the art side, Vitaly's 100% my biggest inspiration. Like his work, I think, is just on another level. There's a few others. Paul Chadison.
Yep, I know him.
He's a French guy, concept artist. He's also very good. But I guess like Steve Jobs as well on a larger, more zoomed out scale in the design world, like the stuff he did, and his passion for that stuff and the stuff he was able to accomplish. Like it's always interesting to read his stories for sure. And again, Elon Musk as well. Like like the stuff he does is just like
you've got to.
I'm trying to think. There's definitely quite a few more. I wonder if I can think of them off the top of my head. I guess they're the main ones.
You could definitely see Steve Jobs in your artwork. You could you could tell. Here's a good thing, man. It's because obviously your main profile picture that you use for social media, the robot, and then you've got the chess kind of padded screen.
The
iPad and stuff. I think that's really sick. It's all these small little things that you bring from all these different talents that really help. So we've talked a wee bit about education, I wanted to ask you a few questions more about it. When it comes to AR, VR, and AI, etc., in terms of like your passions, is there anything you wish was taught more of? Because we both went to Abertay, and to be honest, I don't think many people knew there was the green screen room, and like because it was like hidden in the back. Like I'm pretty sure I didn't see that until like near end of fourth year. I didn't have a clue it was there. Is there anything like I loved Abertay, but it's always great to add extra stuff to improve it. Is there anything that you would like to see more of in like your passionate fields?
Ooh,
Like maybe just more experimenting with like, or more devices like headsets, etc., to just try out different things, like more tools.
Yeah, I guess like some of the stuff that really ignited like my motivation and drive was playing around with those technologies, and maybe that doesn't work the same for everybody, but like I might not necessarily have had those experiences with, for example, it was the HTC Vive. I think I ended up just trying it on because of another friend's project, so it
Hmm.
wasn't even like mandatory or anything. Like it wasn't. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like having more exposure to those technologies and maybe incorporating them into like the class lectures more. I think like technology should be more of a focus point, because that can, I don't know, I felt like maybe more in my masters they sort of leaned away from technology as the focus point and more like the design concepts as a whole. And I get why that is important, but like
Hmm.
also tech is like the sort of enabler to do so many of those design concepts.
Definitely.
So I feel like that, and but maybe not. I think like some what people maybe get wrong about university is like so much of it should come from yourself. Like
Completely
think
agree.
a lot of people really put pressure on lecturers and so on. And well, yeah, like I think every university could have improvements for sure. But like you really need to find what you're interested in by experimenting by yourself outside of the university work hours. What they're essentially there to do is direct and sort of support you, but they're not going to teach you all the specifics
Yep.
and necessarily all the stuff. Everybody goes into different paths as well. Some people go into AAA companies, some people go into indie, some people go into completely different things. Like if I look at what my friends who are in computer arts are doing, they all went down relatively different paths.
Yep.
And so like trying to accommodate to all of those different paths
It's
is,
impossible.
yeah, it's impossible. So like I think it's the most important thing is just get, maybe for the lecturers to get across that it's the student's responsibility to go out and out of work time to go and research or find what they're interested in and experiment with the softwares themselves,
Yep.
just as long as they've got access to that. So like I think when I was there, there was a lot of softwares on the PCs, for example, that we didn't have access to that I would have liked to. So
Hmm.
just making sure that they're there and that you're getting across that they are there and they're meant to be experimented with. I think that's the main thing for me is like, yeah, go and experiment yourself.
Great answer. Because I don't I don't think a lot of people these days understand, or how can I say this the right way? Like, so I agree with you. I don't think there's enough independence. Independence isn't said enough, or isn't highlighted enough. At the end of the day, when you go into the industry, it's like you get to where you are because of the work you put in, and you can't rely on others to get you where you go. It's yes, there's so many people, like we were blessed getting taught by so many great lecturers, but they can only take you so far. It's a relationship. It's the same when you're working in industry. It's yes, they'll tell you what they need done and stuff, but they can't always be there for you. And when it comes to fourth year students these days, I think they like that's the reason, Rafe, why I started the podcast. Like my
Mm-hmm.
whole reason for doing the podcast was making sure that I had a 50-50 split of getting certain things that student education needed and things that students need to start doing more of, because I've always felt that, like you said, and I completely agree with you. I think too many people like to go straight to the lecturers and say, "Oh, it was their fault." But
Mm-hmm.
we have to realize as people, it's all on you. It's all you as an individual. And the biggest driving force for me when I was studying was I knew that I was going to be in instantly debt and then like instantly put into debt once I came out of university, because obviously student loans and stuff. And I
Yeah.
knew that I had to make the most of that. Like I was like telling my dad and stuff, like I'm gonna work my ass off non-stop, making sure that I make the most of everything. Yes, it may have not planned out the exact same the way I thought, but I know for a fact that I put everything into my work, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
I didn't rely on, like, I think I know we's a big. I know it's a big statement to say, but I still think people rely too much, or they expect too much from a degree, or when
Yeah.
they finish their course. Like there's still this misconception. It's got a lot better over the years, but people think, oh, yes, I've got a degree, that means I get a job. That's not how it works.
No chance.
That's not how it works at all.
Yeah.
It's like it's what you and you summarized it there greatly, which was experimenting. It's what you do on the outside. Like, look at how many projects you've done, just testing on the side, and then add that with your university project. Like, that's what you got where you wanted to go, if you know what I mean. Like, it's all like, yes, maybe, like, for example, you were talking about the six finger project, like you were trying this out, and maybe, I don't know, a lecturer wasn't so, like, there might be questioning it. Like, I guess it's their job to question certain things, but that's where you have to also kind of hold your ground and just realize, right, this is what you want, this is what you're trying to figure out, what you want to do as a career, and you tested it, you figured out the answers, etc., and you then got where you wanted to go. And that's what I think it's all about. It's getting that healthy balance of being independent, experimenting as much as you can, and you just, it's, as cliche as it sounds, I say it so many times in the podcast, it's just hard work. You can't be it. I know everyone's like, Ross, you say that every time, but it's the answer. I will say it I will say it for the next 100 episodes, and if it takes 100 episodes to get it in. But it's always an interesting topic, so I appreciate you saying that.
At university as well, like, the really cool thing about it is, like, you get this, well, in most cases you get this 4-year section carved out of your life where you have, like, so much freedom to both experiment, to, like, fail, and to explore what you find interesting. And yeah, of course, like, especially when you're younger, like, university is also about, like, the social life, like, and that's really important, like, too. Like, my first year was an absolute piss take, like, and I don't regret that at all. It was, like, one of the best years of my life. But at the same time, like, yeah, you have those years, like, make sure you use them as well to really take time to explore and above all, experiment. Like, and I think you should always experiment, like, throughout the rest of your life. I think you should always be tweaking and, like, exploring things on the side. But especially during uni, that's your time, like, and don't be, like, at all afraid to cock up, like, and screw up. Like, that's what you want to do, because that's going to help you in the long run, for sure. You want to screw up more in university than you do outside.
Yeah. Do you you just brought up a question I haven't really been able to ask that much. Do you think 4 hours? Wait, 4 hours? 4 years? 4 hours and 4 years is a big difference, Ross. Do you think 4 years is too long or too short?
It depends on the age. So for me, it was definitely not too long, because my first year I had to hardly learn anything. But I think you need that. Like, I think when you're 18, you need a year, like, especially after school, like, you kind of need a year to do, chill out and socialize and explore sort of, like, the beginning of adulthood. But I guess, like, if you were, say, for example, now, if I went to university, I think, and I was really dedicated to the education part of it, like, not like depends on the course, but, like, 2 years would probably be enough. 3 years would probably be more than enough. I don't think 4 years is. Why? What's your opinion on that?
So I'm preparing a podcast right now of, or preparing this document of what I've learned out of all the people I've talked to, and it's always been an interesting question. I think it's too long. Because I think a lot of people, because, for example, do you know when you realize something's like go time, you actually start working, like like when it comes to closer to deadlines, people then realize, gosh, I've got deadlines, it's time to work. So I think if they can kind of make that, like, get that point across, or try and teach people that habit earlier, it would save them money, because money is obviously the main driving factor behind a lot of things, because there's a lot of people who can't go to education because they clearly they don't have the financial backing. Maybe it's because of their situation where they live, you name it, there's lots of contributing factors. But however, I do also think that it is difficult, though, and it goes back to what you're saying, is, like, it's hard to know what you want to do as a career. It takes time to get that question get that question answered. Like, for, like, even when you're a kid, like, or growing up, people are always like, what do you want to do, and what do you want to do? It's like, why is this pressure getting put on me? I don't know. It's there's so many different things it could be. So, and then that goes back to what we were talking about education. It's so hard to kind of take sides. It's all about respecting your teachers and stuff, and realize that a lot of it is independent. Like, you have to figure these things out your own. But to finish my answer on that, though, I would say I would like to see things a bit more kind of go, like actually like getting the momentum going and actually trying to get answers figured out a lot earlier.
Okay, yeah. To be honest, like all the points you made make complete sense. So it might be that case if you're sort of forced into that situation. You're like, oh yeah, like you're gonna waste less time basically.
Yeah.
So and less money as well as a result. So that may well might be interesting, because I know there are some courses like bachelors out there that are 3 years, and I wonder, there's probably statistics out there that like compare the results of those. It's a hard one to measure, but like the results of 4 years compared to 3 years. I think it's I might be wrong. I think maybe in the US or maybe in England it's 3 years rather than 4.
Is it right? Okay, I did not know this.
I might be I might be wrong, but I know that somewhere I'm pretty sure it's 3 years rather than 4.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that's right. And one person I know did 3 years. Their bachelor's with 3 years, so maybe it's course dependent. I'm not sure, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the sort of outcome of that is.
Yeah,
but I do agree with the points that you make. Like I think if you've got maybe it depends on the person as well.
Yeah,
it depends what stage they're going through in life.
Yeah, because I don't think there's enough actual. Because this is another thing. It's so hard for lecturers to do. It's like I think there should be a module that's purely about you, like just in which you talk to the lecturers and stuff about where you think you are. Like literally, it's just all about keeping up to date, and it's all about the mentality side of things and like mindset, physical activity. Like you do, you go out exploring and stuff. What's it called? Where was it you were today? I forgot the term.
Hiking.
It completely went in my brain. I was like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for
exploring.
You're just like, Ross, you're being an idiot. It's like, come on, it's hiking, dude. Come on.
Don't you hike, man?
Yeah, don't. Here, I need to get more hiking. I do running and I do walking, but not enough hiking, dude. Right. First of all, I just want to say thank you for being such a legend and saying so many great things on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks so much, man.
Now it's time for the fun chaos. So we've probably got like another 10 more minutes of fun random questions that I'm pretty sure you're gonna have a good laugh at this, because I know I'm pretty sure I've all my research. Hopefully I can throw some good curveballs at you just now. Right.
I love a good curveball.
So we'll start off with a common one I like to ask: favorite TV show and why?
Oh, right. Okay. I just want to. Well. That's such a hard question. I don't have like an obvious one, but and I'm probably going to go back on this, but for now I'll say Westworld just to stick to the theme.
I was like, is he going to say Westworld?
He's going to say Westworld.
I've only seen 3 episodes, dude. I need to catch up.
Oh man, I mean it's so like specifically the first season. The second season's a bit like too mad, and I've started watching season 3 and I'm enjoying it. But season 1 specifically, I thought it was like so challenging. Like after each episode, you're like, what have I just experienced? Like I need to go off and think. And like I was just so caught off guard with so many things. It felt super original in a lot of ways, and like the concepts it explores just like all line up to what I'm interested in. So it was in so many ways like such an ideal little piece. But I will say it is like just a draining watch. Like you can't binge it. You watch one episode and you're like, right, I need a week to recover from that.
Yeah, there's so many things you have to figure out. You have to like literally take your step, like you said, you have to take a step back, because like I watched the first episode and I was like, concept is one of the most coolest, insane concepts I've ever seen in the history of mankind, because I did not expect it at all. And obviously it being a HBO, part of HBO, I was like, oh, I don't want to. I'm not going to spoil anything because it's a great show. But I know I've only watched 3 episodes, but I've loved it so far. But no, I can't expect you to say that. But I appreciate the answer, so thanks for saying that. Right, if you could travel to any country in the world, where would it be?
Right now?
Yeah, if you could
go
to
a second.
Well, anywhere.
Imagine COVID didn't exist.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to summarize it.
Well, Japan has been on my list for so long. I've never been, so it's been on my list for several reasons. And that, like, I think the culture is really interesting. I think
Mm-hmm.
like the contrast between the modern culture they've got just now and the sort of more like classical culture they've got is just like very interesting. I think a lot of their philosophies are really interesting. Their landscape's really cool. Their Tokyo, for example, is just absolutely nuts. I think it's like one of the highest populated cities in the world.
Yep.
And they've got like such a diverse landscape as well. They've got like mountains you can ski and snowboard in the north, and then you've got tropical beaches in the south, and then everything in between. And also maybe just because it's so different. Sorry, I'm going to keep adding stuff in. The fact that it's so different is really cool, but also, and I think that's useful, like placing yourself in a position that's just really foreign and alien to you is really useful, because Definitely. It just means you see this whole different world, and I think that's part of the fun. But also, more related to this podcast, like some of the artwork and the designs, whether that's like in TV shows or film or like the games, like some of the concepts are so original feeling. Like it just feels different. Like for example, just off the top of my head, Sekiro, the game Sekiro, one of my favorite games. Just some of the designs for some of the creatures in that, and also just some of the gameplay just feels so different and so well done and well detailed. And I don't know what it is. Like part of me is like, okay, I need to go understand why that is.
You have to go experience
I need to know.
Yeah, you need to. Yeah. Oh, dude, you let me know when you do go. Let me know when you experience it, because I have so many friends who's been since they finished uni. I probably have about at least a good handful, almost 10 people have gone over to Japan. Obviously, a lot of my friends from uni loved the whole anime scene, etc. Massive fans and that. And like I've never been myself either, because my mum, she lives in Australia. Like I really want to go over there and experience that side of the world. I was saying this in the previous podcast, but dude, the more travel, folks, you do, the better. The more you learn, the more your designs, like you said,
100%.
It just skyrockets. It's like you'll think you're innovative, and then suddenly you go to a new place and you're like, here's a whole new ball to play. It's a whole new world.
And literally, like I again, don't hold me to this, but I think there's this idea. Well, it's not an idea. I'm pretty sure it's like a fact that when you go to new environments,
mm-hmm.
especially ones that are significantly different, it like literally unlocks part of your genes, like your DNA. Right? Is that true? You heard of that?
This is insane. What's the chances, right? So literally in my last not my last episode, but the day before. So I had an animator called Sheer, and she went to China for her short film called The Train to Qingling, and I'm pretty sure it was her who said this. I'm pretty certain it was her. Was it her? Who's it? Anyway, so the point was that we were on the topic of if you learn a different language, your brain works differently. And I've never learned this. I'm pretty sure it was her. But anyway, I'll let you finish the point.
Oh, like the point for the language is like, so depending on what language you speak, it sort of conditions you to think in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what the science is behind that, but I guess other than like other sort of cultural differences, I guess that can explain like the sort of personality differences between cultures. Like, so if you look at Western versus Eastern culture, like they're very different. They have different views on different things. But I, like the point that's similar to what I was saying is like I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'm sure if you just give it a quick Google search, like if you go to different environments, it literally unlocks parts of your personality or something along those lines. And I don't know, for people that have traveled a lot, like it kind of goes to this idea of like, oh man, you go and travel and you find yourself, bro. And yeah, but it's kind of true. Like I think like a lot of my big travel experiences have sort of the experiences I had there shaped me, or like shifted my perspective on a lot of things. And so I feel like I can attest to that at least a little bit.
Insane answer, thank you. So next one that we're going to go, obviously I was going to go robotics, man. I had to ask you a lot of these questions. If there was one thing from the future that you could that could be built today, what would it be? Is there anything from a film that you craved having in real life right now?
Oh man,
or a game?
So many different things.
If it makes it easier, maybe not one. Is there just things that just you really love to see?
Tying down to robotics.
Well, just anything,
Specifically,
anything to do with the future.
ooh, like hyper immersive virtual reality, like would be a really interesting one. Like there's, and this is again, I'm sort of like worried about this as well. But the idea, well, okay, there's two that I want to go into. So the one is like the idea of that you can create a full robotic body that
Okay.
you could hypothetically control
Mm-hmm.
or upload yourself to somehow. You
Right.
know, that kind of goes into that Ghost in the Shell stuff. Whether or not I think that is a good or bad thing, I don't know, but I think it'd be
Yeah.
interesting. But the other one would be like hyper immersive virtual reality. So like eventually this kind of ties into Neuralink. Eventually you'll be able to explore virtual worlds. Like, okay, this is going to sound super far fetched, but inside your own head.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, say Neuralink in 20 years time is super advanced and it can basically put you in this position where you, I guess, go to sleep and then suddenly you're in your own head, but in this virtual world that this thing is sort of feeding you. And that
Yeah.
sounds like kind of really creepy and dystopian, I guess. But like, then it goes into the whole simulation theory of like, okay, if that happens, then like maybe this could just be a simulation.
Yeah. Oh, the whole. Yeah. Oh, dude, we could be talking for hours on this podcast.
I know.
Yeah, I could just tell. I could get you onto all these crazy different tangents of stories. It's.
I know, man.
It could go on
I'm
forever.
I'm really bad at just giving you a nice like clean answer because I've just gone and talked about a bunch of random stuff. But
Oh, dude, no, it's been great talking to you, man. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Okay, right. This one, I've asked this a few times on the podcast because I'm a big fan of this as well. But I'll ask you the question because I find it is difficult. Would you rather build Tron or the Oasis?
okay, I've actually not watched Tron. I don't really know anything about it.
Right. Okay. So,
So I'm going to say the
I'm not,
Oasis.
yeah, we'll just go with the Oasis. I'm not going to ruin Tron for you because here the new Tron
Is
came
it-
out. They're making a new one, by the way. They're making a
Okay.
new Tron.
Cool.
I'm a massive fan of the new one. Like a lot of people have like do you like the typical old versus new debates, etc. that happens in the world, or like magazine or comic versus film. I think it's an awesome film. I think you personally would love it, dude.
The new one, did you say?
So the one I think it came out in 2011.
Okay. Solid.
Trust me, it is epic. So anyone who's listening, let me know your thoughts. I think it's a great film, so I highly recommend you check out. But there's a new one coming out. I think it's 2022 because obviously due to COVID, I think they've put it a year forward. But
Right.
I can't wait. It's literally it's everything. It's like you get. I'm not gonna ruin the first one because I think it leads on. So
I'm gonna watch it.
trust me, it's great. Okay, right. This is another difficult question. Favorite robot design that you've seen in a film or a game?
Okay. Let me think.
Well, you're like, I did not sign up to this today. This is this is too hard.
Well, like just off the top of my head, the Ghost in the Shell design that Vitali did
Mhm.
for Ghost in the Shell, like from a design perspective or an artistic perspective, that thing is just like unbelievable to me. Like I could just stare at it for hours.
Yeah.
I used it as my wallpaper like for so long.
Nice.
But honestly, there's so many, man. There's so many out there that I love. But that's the one that stands out to me, or it just comes to my head first.
Perfect. Yeah. There's like my childhood one was Johnny Five. Do you remember Johnny Five?
Johnny Five.
Johnny Five.
No,
Oh,
Google it.
anyone who's like. Oh, it's such an old one. Like obviously the classics you got, obviously the T800 and T1000.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can't forget Terminator. But remember Johnny Five? Gosh, those were the. Oh, it's such an old film as well.
I don't think I ever saw it.
Dude,
I'm sorry.
It's such a good laugh watching that as a kid. So, I've got one last question for you, man. It's the question I ask every guest. It's always a bit of a random one. Favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh. As a kid, okay, well, like the classic one, I was obsessed with dinosaurs when I was a kid. Like,
Awesome.
obsessed.
Yeah.
And there was like a cartoon called The Land Before Time.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
Do you know about it?
Yeah. Here, dude. I'm a dinosaur fan as well. I'm not gonna forget Land Before Time.
That thing, like I watched religiously when I was a kid. I was watching that thing all the time. but I've not seen it like since I was
here. It's
6
on Netflix, man. Get to it. It's
Oh
nostalgia.
man, I've got my evening sorted after
It
this, man.
is
I'm gonna jump online for
nostalgia in a
10.
nutshell. It is so awesome. Here, it has been a blast having you on the podcast. Rafe.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
As always, folks, most importantly, go check out this man's work. Go give him a follow. All his links will be shown as you guys have been listening on YouTube, on the slideshow on the back, and you can access all his portfolio, etc. You name it, down below. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. Smash the like button if you enjoyed today's episode. And with that said, folks, we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.